Having worked together on the previous assignment, it was easy for us to meet up on the Discord and start working on a mirror board. We initially laid out the three themes we needed to include, a space for the idea combo and another for inspiration. Working based on the themes was difficult for us, producing minimal ideas such as, would it be fun to play a game where you commit insurance fraud? So we focused more on the combo of ideas with the intention to fit the themes in afterwards. Games such as Immortality, Pikmin, and Cluedo were thrown out especially around one stream of ideas based around a private investigator detective game. Ideas were discussed such as, would it be fun to find objects in real photographs to solve a mystery? Or, what if you had to choose evidence and give justification to try and convict people? Basic game loops were made for these to try and get a feel for how they might play, but they didn't hold our attention. These ideas led into, would it be fun to restore old photographs to uncover a story? We started to move away from the photography idea and lean into, what if a kid's picture book met a horror story? This concept revolved around restoration mechanics to piece together a picture book and slowly uncover the story. These ideas were all interesting, but we couldn't come up with any game mechanics that were satisfying while being achievable for our limited programming skills. From this, we came back to the themes and asked, would it be fun to play a chivalrous knight selling house insurance? It was funny enough for us to think of a mechanic, which ended up being approaching houses to repair them. With that, we were able to create a basic game loop. Run to house to avoid obstacles to reset decay and loop. We also used sketches during this discussion to get a visualization of the game. This conversation sparked many ideas such as, what if you could sprint? What if obstacles spawned randomly? What if some obstacles changed your momentum? Would it be fun to collect points to spend at a shop for upgrades? What if you could jump over obstacles? Through this discussion, we started building a web map which would outline crucial features for the game. This covered the base mechanics, art style, plot, and gameplay loop. Many of the mechanics were shelved at this point since both of us are more designers than programmers, and we didn't want the scope to increase beyond what we could achieve in the 3-week timeframe. As such, the base mechanics that were left were house decay, by which the houses lost health increasingly quickly over time, player control, including a sprint button to increase player speed, player house interaction, which would restore the house health and award points, and the win-lose condition, reach 2,000 points or have one house left. Drawing on the previous ideas, we decided on the art style to be a physical doodle so that our idea combo would be doodle cross medieval. With some searching on the internet, we couldn't find any examples of this combo and decided to push forwards. We created a Trello board at this point to outline what we needed, what was being worked on, what was done, and potential ideas for the future. We then assigned the programming to Ariel and the art and map layout to me. Ariel would start programming immediately in Construct 3 since they were familiar with it. They would share the development through live testing and screenshots through Discord. I started on the map layouts, proposing several different versions focusing on different styles for maps. From there, Ariel made a grey box version to test how the different maps felt, ultimately landing on the more open map since it allowed for more interesting gameplay as the player's speed had greater variance. After updating the Trello, I started gathering art inspiration and physical supplies. I tried several versions for each of the assets before deciding on one. I then drew a larger version and used markers with different sizes to create some contrast in the simple drawings. After some time, the art was done and implemented into the working prototype. Construct was a valuable tool as it's web-based, allowing us to share a link for live playtesting with real-time updates. This was valuable as we were able to make changes such as increase the effect of the sprint mechanic so that it was faster but also less controllable. In the downtime, Ariel wondered, would it be interesting if there were obstacles that slowed the player down? And was able to implement this idea. The next playtest had the open map layout, but with fires spread around the trees and walls and also in open spaces. Navigating through these caused the player's speed to decrease significantly and created more interesting choices as the player could spend more time carefully navigating the fire or try to run through it at full speed. Ariel also implemented a system which turned the houses on one at a time so that the player wasn't immediately overwhelmed. We realized in this session that if the game ended when the last house was destroyed, the player could keep fixing it so the game would never end. We solved this by having the game end when the second to last house is destroyed. We also found that if the player focused on 2 houses, they could establish a comfortable loop and potentially never lose. To solve this, we experimented with increasing the decay rate at different times until we found a steady increase in difficulty. A nice side effect of this system is that the fire animation also speeds up with the house decay, adding to the intensity. With everything implemented and the game loop solidified, we were very proud of what we had made. If we had more time, we would have introduced more mechanics such as the upgrades, but also made the system more robust with different levels, random obstacles, and more polished art. However, the potential to continue working on this game still exists, and we're excited to see how it might evolve in the future. After working with each other last assessment, our comfort and collaboration skills were good. This meant that our communication was already established and we could easily share ideas. With this, there was less fear of suggesting strange ideas or discussions about how mechanics should work. An example of this was a disagreement about randomly generated maps, where we each had a different opinion, but were able to discuss the pros and cons to make the best decision for the game. We also managed scope really well for this assignment. There was a potential for this project to be extremely large through the point system, shop, upgrades, abilities, and obstacle effects. We were able to avoid this through careful discussion around the core gameplay loop, focusing on what we needed for the loop to function, and discarding everything else until we had the time to work on it. An example of this is the player slowing fires, which were an idea shelved at the start, but implemented at the end when we had the time. Our organisation was definitely lacking for this assignment, which forced us to work harder and closer to the deadline. We shared a Discord server from the day one, but the first meeting took close to a week to happen. This was caused by a number of reasons, mostly external factors such as moving, internet outages, and power failures, but it still made organisation hard. Organisation tools such as Trello were extremely useful here, as it was easy to stay up to date with what was being done and what still needed to be worked on. Leading from this, we did not have a prototype until late into the project. This made many tasks difficult around balancing the gameplay loop and fixing major bugs. The saving factor was that Construct 3 allows for web-based playing, which enabled us to do live playtesting of the game in a rapid manner.
For this project, I looked back at my role in my previous assignment and thought that I should be more involved in creating the game other than the art and designing aspect. So I decided to be more of the programmer and designer this time. Working with Fraser was comfortable as we were both on the same team last time, and unlike last time, we learned how to downscale our scope better to have a more finished game with the essentials mechanic implemented. I feel like we were also more efficient this time as we can collaborate the ideas more fluently by having less group mates. But the things I felt we still needed to do better was our organization. It was hard for us to have substantial group meetings, but this was mostly due to external factors like power and internet failure. I feel I could have done better on updating Fraser but playtesting the game by making consistent devlogs each day I work on the game. The closest thing to this was using Trello to see how far we've developed the game and what needs working on next. Other than that, I wish I managed my time more wisely so that I could add more of the mechanic me and Fraser planned. But I'm overall happy with the game and would work more on it in the future and potentially release it if I could.
One space in which I felt I let down the group was in the programming. I wanted to help out more and potentially even learn Construct 3, but I ran out of time. I did get to help when we did live playtesting, but I think I could have applied myself more in this area. I was also really casual about the group meetings, which is partly why we had so few early on. I'm learning in another class how valuable regular and detailed meetings are for group work, and I think a better structure would have helped a lot for this project. In the future, I want to focus on this especially with the larger groups, where communication and coordination can be more difficult. A big leap for me this project was moving out of my comfort zone for the art. All of my art so far has been made digitally, since that is what I've learnt, but for this project, we specifically wanted hand-drawn art. So I had to go and buy art supplies and draw on paper for the first time since I was a kid. It was satisfying being able to apply my skills to a new medium, following principles I had established for myself in drawing this type of doodle art. This flexibility also helped me at the start of the project when I had strong ideas around the type of game I wanted to make. In the past, I could easily have been stubborn about this type of thing, but instead, I worked better as a teammate to come up with an idea we are both proud of. Finally, I kept in mind my reflection from last project, and I tried to provide more detailed mechanics rather than just descriptions, and I think that really helped. I'm excited to see which lessons will stick and which I'll have to learn again for the next project, but at the end of the day, I am extremely proud of this little game.